Welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talks Stros. Find the show at Locked On Astros. Your team every day. Brett, where can they find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter and at Stros411 on Twitter. Well, I don't know about Instagram and Facebook, but always positive, always Stros. And we are in the playoff season. We want y'all to make us your first listen. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check us out wherever you get your podcast.
All right, and we got a special guest to talk about the playoffs, and that is Ben Verlander, the brother of Justin Verlander, who is not returning for the playoffs, but we still wanted to get his valuable insight. So Ben Verlander, I'm getting some feedback, so that's why I'm a little thrown off right now. But where can they find you on Twitter?
Yes, I'm at Ben Verlander on Twitter, and Instagram is the same. It's Ben Verlander. Instagram, Twitter, and I do have a TikTok actually. So all Ben Verlander.
All right. So do you do all this stuff?
No.
Do the no stuff and
no.
All righty. So did the postseason turn out exactly how you expected? I know you've been a big Brewers fan and the whole time, and are those still your favorites to go to win the World Series and win?
You know, I like the Brewers. I like their team. That injury they got to Devin Williams really hurts them. I've said it a lot. Pitching wins in the playoffs, and having an 8th and 9th inning guy is huge, and they just lost their 8th inning guy. So him punching a wall could come back to hurt them. I hope it doesn't. I really like that team. But, my predictions so far to who's going to make it looks pretty good. So we'll see what happens the rest of the way. But I do like the Brewers, and I still have the Brewers in the World Series. So we'll see whether or not that comes back to haunt them.
Ben, go ahead.
This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliability, low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them that Locked On Astros sent you by. So go ahead, Brett.
No, I was just going to say, and I didn't think about that. I put my full weight behind my prediction, and someone said, why the Brewers? And I said, because Ben Verlander also picked the Brewers. And then I wasn't even thinking about Devin. I was just thinking, endorsing what I thought. And so anyways, I think the National League, Ben, is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be an interesting, what's going to happen. Are the Dodgers going to get surprised? I mean, the Cardinals are red hot,
I have actually predicted, we had to do a full prediction thing for Fox today for an article. And I was the only one that predicted the Dodgers to lose in the wild card game to the Cardinals. Look, I just think wild card games are such a toss-up. Right. Nobody on the planet is hotter than the Cardinals right now. Obviously, the Dodgers have a great team. I do think that Muncy injury really hurts them. I just think when it all comes down to it in a one-game playoff, it's kind of a toss-up, and I'm going to take the hottest team on the planet right now in the Cardinals, and we'll see what happens. So I like the Cardinals. That'd be a big time if the Dodgers get booted in the first round, and then I have the Cardinals advancing past the Giants before they lose to the Brewers in the NLCS. So we'll see what happens there.
All right, so I know that everybody's kind of like, okay, we've seen the Yankees versus Red Sox before in a series, but this is a one-game wild card game. This should be an epic matchup. Who do you see taking this, Ben?
Yeah, I was rooting for, I would have liked to seen the Blue Jays get in. Maybe the Mariners would have been fun, but look, it's the Red Sox and the Yankees in a one-game playoff game. What more can you ask for? It's going to be heated. We know that. I actually think I have the Yankees winning. I just think I think having Garrett Cole on the mound is a big advantage, I really do. I think that game is a toss-up, man. Like Both of them beat up on each other all year. They played 19 times. The Red Sox won 10 of them. It's like, what are you expecting? And when I look at the pitching matchup, I know Eovaldi throws great in the playoffs, but I'd rather have Garrett on the mound in a toss-up game. So that's why I'm taking the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, I said this on podcasts. It's really not fair that the Red Sox have had this great team all year, and then the Yankees go on this amazing winning streak, and they're basically not in the playoff picture. Now all of a sudden they go on this. I forgot how long the winning streak was. I don't really care. But then they get back in this winning streak, and then they could take out a team that's been so consistent like the Boston Red Sox have been. But that's baseball. That's just what this wild card situation is, and that's why we love it at the same time. And so that's why I'm glad the Astros have no part of a one-game playoff, because anything can happen, and you have to throw out your best pitcher out there. That would be Lance McCullers. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, that's who the Astros will be throwing out for game one, and that Dusty Baker has kind of already hinted at that. That would be your starter. I know that Jay Kaplan has said, well, there's some sense to go ahead and throwing out Framber Valdez in that situation. That way you can have him start twice. But if you go to 5 games, Valdez will be starting twice. So do you think that Lance McCullers is your ace and the guy you start in game one?
Absolutely. You got the ball, game one, home game for the Astros in the playoffs. Lance McCullers is the option for me. I just think he embodies what the Houston Astros are. He is the definition of a Houston Astro. He has thrown great all year long. So you give the ball to one guy for game one of the entire playoffs. It's Lance McCullers.
And he's got that fire. He's got that, just when he gets on the mound, especially at home, just a fire that you can't match. And I think Framber, although Framber would do a great job, like you said, Lance McCullers, because Ben, we interviewed him before the season started, and he said, if you ask me who should be starting opening day, I would say me. Give me the ball. And that's his mentality. And that's the mentality of an ace. That's the mentality of a guy who signed a deal to be here long term and who has endeared himself to the city. And it's going to be great because you got Kyle Tucker, who is the newly crowned player of the month for MLB. And you've got an offense backing up LMJ that I think makes this Astros team very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Tucker is, there's not many people hotter than him at the plate right now on the planet. So, and he's not even one of the top, when you think of the Astros lineup, he's not a top 3-4 guy that you think of. So having that depth in the lineup just makes them so dangerous. Look, it's going to come down. It's going to come down to the pitching for the Astros. We know what their offense is capable of, and we know they can put up runs. But we also know, and we've seen in many World Series, we've been on both sides of it. 2019, with that whole series with the Nationals, in 2017, pitching can shut down a good offense, and it's going to come down to the pitching that they get on any given night, because we know what the offense is going to do. So it really is going to come down to what we can get from what can you get out of your starting pitchers in a game 1, 2, and 3, because that's what you need in the playoffs is 3 starters that you can go out there on any given night and shut the other team down. And do the Astros have that right now? You have guys that are capable of it, but that haven't proven that they can do it in the playoffs. So it's kind of like, what are you going to get from a starting pitching standpoint once you get past Lance? Because Lance has proven he's a big game pitcher. He can come in at any point and he can shut a team down. So having Lance at the top is huge.
Yeah, so you got to have the right parts for your rotation, your bullpen, and even for the right start time. So we'll talk about that in a second. But Brett, tell us a little bit about rockauto.com.
Yeah, Rock Auto, with the increasing numbers of makes and models, it's impossible now for your local chain store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts from their computer, choosing only the brand their warehouse carries? Right now, you can take control into your hands. Go to rockauto.com. Spend 30, 50, sometimes 100% less than you would at an auto parts store. Like a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 at a chain store But right now at Rock Auto, you can get it for $216. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and they don't charge you a different price because you're not a professional mechanic, because we're regular Joes just like you, and we go to rockauto.com for all our car needs, whether it's windshield wipers, tail lamps, motor oil, or even new carpet for the van. That's right. It doesn't matter where you're going or what you got going on. Explore rockauto.com. It's an easy-to-use website. Find your solution today. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in there. How did you hear about us box? And let them know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
All right, so Ben, I want to ask you a question. As an Astro fan, we're kind of used to this. We're kind of used to the early start time. It seems like every year during the ALDS, we always get stuck with, oh, the Astros are playing. Let's go and put them at the early slot. Nobody wants to watch the Astros play, and it doesn't matter who they play. It's like, oh, we want to reserve the primetime slots for the Yankees or whoever is going to be playing. So I don't know if you and Justin have ever talked about this, or you heard other players talked about this in the past. But what does a team think about always playing the early games in these situations?
I mean, the team doesn't care, but I know as a fan it becomes, I'm very well aware of it in 2017 and 19 when I was along for every single game of the postseason. It's just like, okay, are we ever going to get the primetime games? And the answer is, and it's not that people don't want to watch, but the answer is no, because as long as the Yankees and the Red Sox are involved in that ALDS on the other side of things, they're always going to get it. And it's frustrating, but I do understand it. And you gotta, it's all about ratings, and the Yankees and the Red Sox are going to bring those ratings. But I just remember in 2017 and 19, just can somebody throw us a bone? Can we get one primetime game? Is that ever going to happen? And it just never does. It never does. So I gave up hope on it.
Yeah, so on Thursday, we do have a 3:07 start, and then on Friday, we have a 1:05 or 1:07 start. I don't know exact time, but we do have, on Sunday, we do have a primetime start. So they did give us that, but during a weekday, when some of us have to work, it does suck that we have to do this, but at the same time, at least it's not a 9 a.m. type start or something like that. But it just sucks in that situation, but at the same time, it's good to kind of get that out of the way so you can kind of enjoy the Astros, then watch the other games and enjoy a full night of baseball without the stress of being like, oh, well, we still got to watch the Astros. You get to kind of relax and just watch some more good baseball.
So I want to ask you this. One of our listeners the other day posed this, and he kind of came up with the idea of re-signing Carlos Correa. He said, can you imagine the buzz that there will be in the city if the Astros sign Carlos Correa before Wednesday or by Wednesday? Like how much this city would be just on fire, because that last game, Ben, when he walked onto the field, Eric was there without the team. When he walked off the field, just seeing the faces of the players, seeing the emotions of the people in the stands, it was almost like celebration, but almost a funeral type atmosphere. Like, he's gone? Is he gone? And so I don't know. What do you think? I mean, would that be like just kind of a dream scenario where they sign him before a playoff series? I don't think that's ever happened.
Yeah, I don't think it's, not to my knowledge, as it happened, and I don't think anybody should be holding their breath that it happens beforehand. Look, I know how much Astros fans want it to get done, how much they want the Correa signing to happen. But I just don't foresee it happening beforehand. But man, what a buzz that would cause, right? They announce it on Thursday morning, and then they show up to the park and people are just pumped. That'd be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, and you have to work with the agents. And Correa really wants to focus on this. And I know everybody's like, "Well, he said the regular season," but this is still an extension of the regular season, and this is more important than the regular season in a certain way. But I don't. A lot of people were saying, "Well, why did you say your goodbyes to Carlos Correa yesterday? Why did Dusty Baker allow him to, or the Astros players allow him to take the field?" Before the game and kind of allow the fans to do that. Then Dusty Baker allowed him to kind of exit the game and let the players kind of say their goodbyes. And the reason why is because we didn't get to do that with George Springer. George Springer was just kind of, we weren't really sure, but this is a way that we got to do it with Carlos Correa, even though we have the playoffs to kind of do that. But now this was the way the Astros fans got to do it. So was that the right move by Dusty Baker?
Yeah, I think that makes a great point. You never know how long you're going to be in the playoffs. You never know. And even if you win a series, you never know when your last home game is going to be because you're going on the road every 3 days essentially. And what happened with George Springer, I think I think Dusty Baker regrets that. I think George Springer regrets not being able to say bye. I think the fans regret not having that moment. So giving that to Carlos Correa the other day, yesterday, it was really, really cool to see, in my opinion. And the emotions on every end were high. You could see it in the stands, you could see it on Correa's face, and you could see it on his teammates' face. So I'm glad they did it the way they did.
So, hey, it looks like our listeners, if we can't sign your brother, they want to sign you 2 years, $49 million. Are you for that?
Yeah, I'd be down. 2 years, $49 million. I think we might have to renegotiate a little bit to get a little more there, but I'd be down for that.
All right. So what position would you play then?
I was an outfielder with the Tigers organization. But now that I've seen Shohei do what he did, I also pitched a little bit in college, and I was told that I had to pick one or the other. But now I see that I wouldn't have to pick one or the other. So I would come back as a dual threat. I think I would be a Shohei Ohtani of some sort for the Astros, I think.
So you'd be a Brett, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay. Just be like H-Town Wheelhouse. But okay, so going into the playoffs, let's say the Astros take care of business in 4 games or 5 games. Who do you think the Astros' worst opponent would be? Like the opponent they would least like to face? Would it be the Rays, the Yankees, or the Red Sox out of those 3 teams?
I think the Rays are the worst matchup for anybody. I just think they have no weakness. When you look at their pitching rotation, their offense, they get it done in every single way. I don't think they match up poorly against anybody. I think they're a great matchup for everybody. And of all those teams, I think the Rays are the worst matchup.
Yeah, and the Astros have faced them the last 2 years in the playoffs. They beat them one time, and then last year the Rays beat them en route to go into the World Series. Yeah. So yeah, the Rays, and they got better, and they played the Astros pretty good, but the Astros ended up beating them in the last series. So yeah, that's an interesting matchup. But I do want to look at. I know that we don't know who's going to be in the starting staff for either team. We have a very good idea about who's going to be in the Astros rotation, but the White Sox, it's kind of up in the air. From what I'm hearing, and we're going to talk to the White Sox guys on Wednesday, but from what I'm hearing is that they want to kind of save Rodon's innings a little bit, and so he may pitch in Game 3. So they're talking about having either Lance Lynn or Lucas Giolito in Game 1. Does that make any sense, or do you throw your horse out there even though he may be wearing down a little bit?
Look, there's no saving innings at this point in the playoffs. It just doesn't. That doesn't make sense. If you say, he throws better at home, we want to give him the energy of that home crowd instead of sending him into a hostile environment on the road. 100% makes sense. I get that. I would see that direction, but you can't go. They have 3 studs at the top of their rotation. So that is the benefit they have, is it doesn't really matter where you go with them. All 3 of those guys are studs, in my opinion. And maybe if one of them throws better at home, then maybe that's what they're doing with Rodon. Maybe you say, we want him to throw in front of the home crowd. So, oh no, we have to throw out Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito on the road, which isn't the end of the world.
Now, how important was it at the end of the season because you saw the young guys come up, you saw Jake Myers catch the world on fire, you saw, Chas McCormick got into double-digit home runs. Jose Siri, he is dealing with a fracture, but he came in and set the world on fire with his bat. To see McCormick and Myers hit home runs both in the last game of the season, how key could these young outfielders be to an Astros World Series run in 2021? I mean, I'm sure you paid attention to them. They've got some flair. They've got pop and they've got gloves.
Yeah, I think it's a huge key. You look at postseason baseball, and every single year, the team that wins, somebody steps up that you don't expect. You expect the Altuves to play well. You expect Correa to play well. You expect Bregman to do his thing. You need them to do their thing. But in the playoffs, you need those guys that you're not expecting to step up and be somebody special. And those guys are a perfect example of that. I look back at the last couple of years. You have guys that are the reason their team gets to the World Series you're not expecting it. Randy Arozarena last year, nobody knew his name. And then he goes and sets all these postseason records. The year before, which is a tough one to talk about, Juan Soto was a good player. We all knew he was a good player, but he's, the Nationals don't win that World Series if it's not for him. They don't get to the World Series if it's not for them. So I feel like those two guys have the potential to be a piece for the postseason that nobody expects, which every team has. You go back to the Cardinals when David Freese became that guy. You need somebody to step up that nobody expects it to happen. And I could very well see it being one of those two guys.
Yeah. So speaking of which, it's hard to really bet on who's going to win because we've seen a lot of weird stuff this year. But you know who could help you with that? BetOnline.ag.
Yeah, we're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back for another football season. If you watch this week, the GOAT returned to his hometown and squeaked out another win to put another notch in his belt and break the all-time passing record. Well, BetOnline is your number one spot for pro and college football action as well. Look up World Series odds. The Astros have the second or third highest chance to make it to the World Series in front of many teams that you think would be in front of them. They have new updated odds. They have an updated website and interface where you get more odds and props and contests than ever before. They are also number one for football. Use your mobile device or go to the website today. Sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use a promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. From football, basketball, baseball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts here.
And don't forget to make Locked On Astros your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, whether that's YouTube. Keep on subscribing to YouTube. We're going up there, and don't forget to listen on Odyssey, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. Listen to the Locked On Astros podcast. So I know we're talking a little bit about the playoffs, but I just wanted to go ahead and ask you. Ben, real quick, what do you think about what Dusty Baker did in the clinching game? Have you ever seen a manager that, I don't want to use the word old, do a shoey, like literally drink beer out of a shoe?
I haven't, but I love it. I think it was incredible to see. I think when you have older managers in the game with a team as young and as exciting, I look at Dusty Baker, I look at Tony La Russa. It's cool for the players to see their manager do something that nobody expects them to do. Everybody has respect for Dusty Baker. Everybody on the White Sox has respect for Tony La Russa, but they're older guys. So to see them do something like that, to see Dusty Baker do that, you could see the excitement from the players in the pictures and videos. So that was really cool to see, I thought.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I know that I have been, I don't know if I can say I can speak for myself, been, very critical, I think, at times at his, I feel like some of his roster moves, some of his lineup choices, some of his sitting choices that I'm sure were pre-planned before the season started. But at the end of the day, we have heard from people that played for him, like Clay Hensley, that he is a player's coach. And the players do seem to buy into what he offers them. And this ball club, like, I think, unlike any other, not that all other ball clubs are just they don't have any unity or they're not one unit, but the Astros have this atmosphere. They have this aura about them that when you get in this clubhouse, like Kendall Graveman, the second he was there, he said he felt like he was a part of the team. And I think that's going to be key. I think, Ben, this is a team that sports the most playoff games total of any team in the playoffs. And I believe that is going to play a huge advantage for the Astros, no matter who they face.
Yeah, experience in the playoffs is enormous. You can't put a value on playoff experience, but for so many reasons, it's so important for calming nerves, for coming up in the right spot at the right time and having been there before. From a managerial perspective, having a manager that's been there before. It's all so important. So having the most number of playoff games of anybody in the playoffs it's not being talked about enough, I don't think. It's a vital component to this, is having that experience. And all of these guys on this team does, and that's going to be important.
All right, so assuming that we know that Zach Greinke is out of the rotation for the playoffs, and assuming that Jake Odorizzi has not built up enough endurance to be in rotation, what order would you put the Astro starters, Ben?
I think it depends on the seeding in the playoffs. For Series 1, where you're the home team and you play 2 at home and 3 on the road, I'd go Lance McCullers, Framber, and then Urquidy. I think Urquidy proved in 2019 when he went on the road into a hostile environment in DC and really shut them down. He proved that the moment isn't too big for him, which is important. And what you see a lot is guys coming up in big, important moments and not throwing well. But there's also the contrary to that, guys that thrive in that moment, guys that are meant and built for that moment. And he just went in, honestly, and set them up perfectly to have Garrett and my brother in 6 and 7 and just shocked the world by dominating that game on the road. And so I think giving him the ball in a game 3 when that third game is on the road is key. So I'd go Lance, Framber, and Urquidy.
And I'm sorry, and
Garcia would be 4th then.
Yeah, Garcia would be 4th in that order. But I think it does make sense now that you mention it, because if you get the experienced playoff pitcher, the experienced World Series pitcher, and he gets a win, and well, if you get 3 wins,
you don't even need Garcia. Yeah,
you don't need Garcia. But if for some reason for some odd reason they split at home, Garcia sees him win on the road, I think that gives your rookie confidence. And that's the thing about Garcia, is his poise has been almost impeccable, almost perfection for what he's been put through. He's been in a lot of high leverage situations, a lot of pressure situations, and he's not ever really cracked. He's had some outings where he's given up runs, but emotionally he seems like he's stayed in the moment. And I think that's key. But the bats have to be hot. The bats can't go into these lulls like they did towards the end of the season.
Exactly, and that's the important thing. You can't afford, when you're a team that's built around your offense, you can't afford to go in lulls. And that's the one thing that scares me with this Astros team, is it's going to be about offense, and you have to put together, 13 straight games of good offense, at least 13 good games of offense to win it all. And they're more than capable of that. Don't get me wrong, but that's the one thing that would scare me. But you're right about having, I like Urquidy in game 3 because it gives Garcia that opportunity to, there's something too. You go on the road. You've never been on the road in the postseason. It's a totally different environment, by the way. Like, throw everything out the window. So even though he's not participating in that game 3, you get the vibe. You see the flyover. You see the fireworks. You hear the crowd going nuts. You can prepare yourself and say, all right, tomorrow this is me. I'm out there tomorrow. Instead of taking that all in for the first time and then being expected to go out on the mound and just being super overwhelmed, you get that day to take it all in and see what it's like.
So Jay Roberts brings up Luis Garcia's home versus road record. This year at home, he is 6-5 with a 2.39 ERA in 79 innings with 90 strikeouts. On the road, he is 5-3, ironically, with a 4.24 ERA with 76 innings. He has 77 strikeouts. So obviously the offense has supported him a little bit more on the road, but his ERA is a little bit higher. You would think that they would kind of weigh that into their decision to whether they should start him in game 2 over Framber Valdez and maybe save Valdez for maybe game 3 on the road.
Absolutely. That's something they absolutely take into account. And that's something, to be honest with you, that they probably already know. Dusty's probably talked to Framber and Garcia and Urquidy and told them, hey, this is what, look, the Astros have known they're going to be in the playoffs for a long time now.
Right.
They've been able to set up their rotation however they want. Dusty Baker knows exactly what he's going to do, and all of the pitchers at this point know exactly what he's going to do. He probably just doesn't want to tip his hand yet.
Right.
So whatever they're going to do, they already know. And that's absolutely could be the case. And it could be something where he sits them all down and says, Framber, you would be my guy for game 2. Would you be comfortable if we push you to game 3? Or would you be okay with that so we can get Garcia started home? And just talking it through with the guys. But it absolutely makes sense to throw Garcia at home. Again, he would get to experience that home atmosphere in game 1 without pitching and then be able to settle in for game 2 and know what he's going out there for. So I think, whatever you do, I think they already know, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, Valdez is actually 6-4 with a 2.88 on the road with 57 strikeouts and 72 innings.
I think we answered it for ourselves, guys. I think we just established what's going to happen.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's because we've got, like you mentioned before, we've got some of the best listeners. We've got some of the Locked On Astros Nation knows their baseball. And that's why we love having you on here. And we hope that everybody makes us their first listen. And I know the White Sox going to Chicago, it is hostile territory, and they show up. I was actually talking to my neighbor before the podcast, and he was telling me his in-laws are all from Chicago, and he's only been to one White Sox game, and he said it was like a playoff atmosphere. He said they are rabid, they are excited, and he goes, you don't wear the opposing jersey in the stadium, especially if you're a Cubs fan, especially if it's a playoff. So he said it's a crazy atmosphere, and he said the cell, as they call it, is definitely going to be rocking. And one thing Astros fans, and we've discussed this, Eric, one thing that we have to realize, I know we swept them at home, and I'm confident that we'll beat them, but they also weren't full strength when we swept them. They're a different team. And so all bets are off. The gloves are off in the playoffs. And like you said, Ben, it really doesn't matter what you've done before. It matters what you're doing now. And both teams are at full strength. So it's going to be a battle.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to this series. I think a lot of people aren't giving the White Sox the credit they deserve just because of the division they played in and they coasted into the playoffs. This team is the real deal. And when you look at playoff baseball, as I've said time and time again, pitching wins in the playoffs. So, which is large part why I had the Brewers in the World Series, is because they have a top 3 of the rotation that's dominant, and then they have an 8th, 9th inning guy. There's all these links to getting to the finish line. And if you can link it together, you're going to win the game. And having a good rotation with a good 8th inning guy and then a good 9th inning guy just shortens that middle ground of how do we get there? How do we get to our guys? And the Brewers certainly have that, and the White Sox have that as well. They have a roster that is built to win in the playoffs with great pitching, and then they have a lineup that's healthy now with a bunch of stud young guys in it, as well as these veterans that are just really good. So I think the White Sox are a great team that just isn't quite getting the credit they deserve because of the division they're coming out of.
Yeah, but so if you're a White Sox fan, you're not super worried about the fact that they went 27 and 29 versus teams above 500?
I'm not. I think, it's one game, and I don't normally like pointing to one game, but the biggest regular season game that baseball has seen in 20 years happened this year. And it was the White Sox and the Yankees on the biggest stage with more people watching it than they have in 2 decades against the New York Yankees. And, I say that with a little bit of sarcasm, but the Yankees are the Yankees. We all, they're a big team. And they went in on that stage and competed and slugged their way to a victory. And, it was really fun watching them. They got it done from everybody. Jose Abreu, Tim Anderson, Liam Hendricks closed it out. They proved that on a big stage, and it's not as big of a stage as the playoffs, but in the spotlight against a good team, they can go out there and slug with the best of them. So, it doesn't worry me. The White Sox haven't been playing for anything in months. They've known they were the division champs for a long time to this point. And you may not think that's a huge deal, but you can coast, and there is something to coasting. Like, you're not playing your hardest every, night in and night out. You look at teams coming down the stretch you look at the Cardinals. They were playing for their lives, and they played great baseball. The White Sox, since June, have known they were going to be in the playoffs and known they were going to win the division and known they were going to be in the ALDS against somebody. And there's something to be said for that, certainly.
Yeah, and as long as we don't have to play them in the cornfield, I think that'll work out well for the Astros.
There was some magic happening in that cornfield, that's for sure.
Yeah, I did like the intro, and when Kevin Costner was just having, like, they're all walking onto the field. That was pretty
Incredible.
Cool. Yeah, it was as somebody who really liked that movie as growing up, that kind of made me become a big baseball fan, and so it was just awesome. So looking at, now that we've seen Jake Myers, and now we've seen a lot of Chas McCormick, and see a little bit of Jose Siri. I don't know if we know the extent to Siri's injury. Who do you think is going to get a lot of the playing time in center field in the playoff?
I think it's gonna honestly come down to, I said earlier, people are either built for this moment or they're not. And, I feel like both of those guys are going to get a chance throughout, unless, I think in game 1, I would give the start to McCormick and, have him out there and just see how it goes. And I'm not saying if he goes 0 for 4, you pull him the next day. But if he doesn't get a hit at home, in those first 2 games, if he's 0 for 8, I could very well see them switching it up. And on the road, that's not the case anymore. So I really think one of those 2 guys is going to make a huge difference in the Astros postseason run. I think they need it, but I really believe one of them is going to step up. And it's going to be – you can't expect George Springer because that guy's just different when it gets to October. He's one of those guys that is not only built for October. He's one of the guys that we're going to look back one day, and he's going to be one of the best in history when it comes to, look, in playoff baseball, who gets it done? And that guy is George Springer. Look, it's been October for a few days, and George Springer already hit a couple home runs, and they're not even in the playoffs. I think one of those guys is going to step up, and it's going to be made apparent fairly quickly, and then you'll see them with that start throughout the postseason.
You have to wonder if you go ahead and start Jake Myers. He is a good hitter too, but also because he is the better defensive player, and Chas McCormick is also a good bat off the bench, and so that's something that you may look at.
Absolutely,
yeah.
No, I just think that's definitely something. And you don't want to count your chickens before they hatch, but if they do get to the World Series, I definitely think that's even if the hot hand, whatever the hot hand is. I see that playing out differently in a National League park. Right. I think you do, if it's still a toss-up at that point, I think you go exactly in the direction you're talking about, just to have the better defensive option, and then know at some point you're pinch hitting McCormick, and then maybe double switch late in the game and leave him in for his bat. I think that's going to be something Dusty Baker could do in the World Series.
I think it's amazing that you got someone like Carlos Correa still, who's got 17 postseason home runs and 56 or 60 something at bats. And then imagine this, if Alex Bregman has a breakout postseason, he hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't been, Mr. Clutch. And then Yordan Alvarez. If Yordan Alvarez and Alex Bregman and Carlos Correa and Kyle Tucker and the American League batting champ and Michael Brantley, I keep going on and on and on. This lineup, it's hard for me to, and I'm not being a homer here, it's hard for me to imagine that lineup getting shut down.
Right.
Last year they needed Carlos Correa and a couple home runs from Altuve, and they were one game away from the World Series. This year, you got 330 home run guys. You got Kyle Tucker, who's figured out just about every pitcher, it seems like. Ben, are we in for a high-scoring series?
I think yes. I think you're almost hoping for it as an Astros fan. The offense needs to show up. Needs to. And for that to happen, you're in for a high-scoring series. And just listening to you talk about it, the names just keep coming. The guys are there's so many studs in that lineup that it's hard to see them getting shut out, but for so long.
Right. And so with that being said, let's get your stone cold locks about who's going to win the series, Ben.
I don't have any stone cold locks. I'll promise you that. Look, this one's tough, and I will say this on here. I hope the Astros win. And these listeners aren't going to be happy with me here, but I actually have the White Sox in the World Series from the American League. But look, it's tough to call. I really like the way their team is built, but it literally all comes down to the Astros offense. If they can be a shell of what they are, they're going to win. They're going to win the series. They're going to get to the World Series. It's just a matter of, is there a pitching staff that can shut them down? And if it's anybody, it's the White Sox. If they get through this ALDS, I truly believe they beat whoever they play. I just think this matchup of anybody is tough. I think the White Sox pitching rotation is enough to shut them down. I don't think anybody else in the league has a pitching rotation that can shut them down. So I think if they get through this series, it'll be a clean sailing from there.
Well, Ben, you'll still be considered one of our favorite guests in 2021, regardless. I know our listeners are cringing and hating hearing that, but we're here for your honest opinion. And when it comes down to it, these are discussions, and really it comes down to what the players do on the field. You and I could parse. We could split stats. We could do all kinds of stuff. Eric and I, we could analyze everything. At the end of the day, the boys got to go out and play the game. And the team that plays better is going to win. Like Alex Rodriguez says, whoever scores the most runs wins the game. So
very well said there, very said by A-Rod. Whoever scores more, I think, is going to win the game. Look, the Astros score with the best of them. So if they can put up some runs, they're going to be just fine. I just think this first matchup is tough. And look, I feel like no matter what show I'm on, people deserve my total honesty, and I gave it, and I knew they wouldn't love it, but we all know who I'm rooting here for. I just wanted the full disclosure to be out there.
Yeah. So I think earlier in the year you said that it would be the Brewers over the Astros anyway. So we already knew that you didn't. You weren't going to have the Astros win the World Series anyway. So we already knew what was going to happen. So it's fine. It's all good. But I think it's all going to come down to the bullpen. The Astros bullpen. Who's in the bullpen? How good will Greinke do at learning the bullpen? I know he pitched in the final game in the bullpen, but this is a new role for him. Who's going to be in the bullpen? Are these new guys the Astros traded for going to really click? And so we'll have to see. But that's just kind of a
guy that can go out and shut people down. I think this Astros team is a World Series championship type team like a lot of people are predicting. But I really think it comes down to those 3-4 guys in the rotation and what you can get out of them.
All right. So, Ben, once again, thank you for coming on. Go and tell us a little bit about your podcast and where they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, all social medias is just Ben Verlander, at Ben Verlander. And the podcast is called Flippin' Bats with Ben Verlander. And we just had Pudge Rodriguez on, by the way, which was really, really cool for me. He is this week's episode, Pudge Rodriguez on Flippin' Bats. And, one thing I just found out is that I'm a top 20 podcast in the U.S. and number 1 in all of Japan, thanks to the Shohei Ohtani stuff I talk about. But seriously, it would mean the world if you guys check it out. I'm all about just being a young voice in the game of baseball and talking about the game of baseball in a new, fun, and exciting way, and just showcasing the best things going on and talking to some all-stars along the way. So it's Flippin' Bats on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts.
All right. So thank you for joining, and hopefully we'll be talking to you and telling you how wrong you were after the Astros win the World Series, and we'll rub it in your face a little bit. And that's all we got for this edition of Locked On Astros podcast. Make sure you check out Brett's appearance on the Locked On MLB podcast, and we'll be back tomorrow with Mike Stanton on another edition of the Locked On Astros podcast. Go Astros, and hopefully we'll have a great ALDS.